I do speak a few languages, but Spanish is one of the languages I'm still not confident in. I started learning it 10 years ago, and one of the reasons I'm not very confident in this language is because of the R, because I can't roll my R. Now we have the pronunciation master here. So Idahosa, do you have any tips for me on what I can do in order to roll my R finally?
Yeah, so for the first thing, it's very important to know that there's two different R sounds in Spanish. You have the one that's typically written with one R, but not necessarily. That's called the alveolar flap. And that's made by just flicking your tongue, which I believe you can do. If you say ara, iri, uru, ere, oro.
Ara, iri, uru, ere, oro.
Okay, so the first thing you need to do before you get carried away and start trilling is you need to make sure you have that sound distinct from the D sound.
Okay.
So if I say ada, idi, udu, and ara, iri, uru.
Ada, idi, okay, this one is okay. Ada, idi, and then ada, ada.
Yeah, so you want to focus first on the alveolar flap, and the best way to do that is focus on saying the D sound with the tip of your tongue as fast as you can. Think of it as like your D, and he's in a hurry, it's late for the bus. So if I say ada, ada, ada,
ada, ada, ada.
Now if you keep saying da, 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 da as fast as you can, yeah, eventually you'll start to trip up and say da, 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 and you'll start doing a tap naturally. Because all a tap is, from a physiological perspective, is a D that doesn't have enough time for air to build up behind it to make a D. So you're just saying da, 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 da.
So that's the first step.
That's the first sound. You can't really, I mean, people can trill and not do tap, but I recommend if you're not comfortable with the tap sound on its own, don't even bother with the trill, because the tap is actually way more important in Spanish. But assuming you got that, then you want to let your tongue get nice and loosened up, right? It's kind of like yoga for your tongue here. And the way you do that is you want to say this alveolar tap sound as quick as you can, like this. Now I'm supernaturally fast because I don't have a life and I spend all my time doing these kind of things in my room. But if you do it, you clock in the hours, you'll get to a point where your tongue is dexterous and fast enough to start doing it. Now, to be clear, a trill sound, you're not moving anything. You're not using any muscles. What you're actually doing is relaxing the tongue muscles and then letting it float in the wind. And it's kind of like when you're driving a car down the highway and the window's down, you have like a piece of paper flapping on the dashboard. It's the same effect. So you can only do that, however, if your tongue is loose, if it's flexed out and stretched. That's why I recommend doing it until it's loose from speaking Spanish. And then for me personally, I couldn't get this, like I said, until I was 19. And it came from me doing this type of stuff over and over again. And the first breakthrough happens with the voiceless version, like this. If you can get like just one kind of tongue trap on its own, you know, savor that. Try to make it two. Try to make it longer. And you want to sustain that as long as you can.
Because it's also a matter of practice, right? You cannot really learn it.
It's just practice.
Some people can learn it in a day, but for the people it just takes time.
It's just sweet spot. Like right now I'm learning how to do handstands, for example. And a lot of it's strength, but most of it is just finding the sweet spot. And the first time you find it, you do it like, oh, I'm handstanding, and then you fall over.
And it's the same with this.
And then you come back a week later, and you're like, oh, boom, handstand. Easy. So you have to find the sweet spot for a trill. Once you nail it, you just keep sustaining it. Then your final task is to add voice to it. And the way I recommend doing that is you go, and that's all it is. You're just combining the two sounds.
Well, thank you for the very interesting tips. I'm gonna try that on my trip to Mexico next week, and see you next time.
See you next time.